All right. So, a brief introduction about InfosecTrain. This is a company which was established in 2016, providing a range of certifications relative to IT and information security. And if you're interested in any of the certifications and the associated trainings, you can go out to their websites. Otherwise, get connected with one of the sales personnel who will help you guide through the schedules and the courses that are available with them. Having stated that, let's move on. Okay, so within this particular webinar, we will be covering topics relative to ensuring the strategic alignment between business and IT and its deliverables. We will cover topics relative to uh, resource optimization and some of the topics related to benefits realization and risk optimization. So to be uh, you know um, governance of enterprise IT is something that we will be discussing today. So um, as you might be realizing that enterprises around the world are going through this phase of digital transformation, where things which were otherwise being done manually or through standard business process design, um, have been kind of leveraged through IT to automate it. And with the emergence of technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning, a lot of these things are getting automated as well. So IT has assumed a kind of center stage in terms of supporting the sustainability and the growth of the enterprises. So previously, the governing boards, that is essentially the board of directors and the leadership, kind of could delegate and even ignore and avoid IT related decisions. So, in most sectors and industries, now this is something that isn't something that is advised, because the way IT has kind of started taking over the activities and started, influencing the key activities within the overall business landscape. IT and the risks emerging from the IT has now taken a center stage that allowed the board to kind of you know, pay higher attention towards ensuring IT and its associated investments and the residual risks coming out of it are appropriately addressed. So, s- at the center of it, right, the key component that one needs to understand is that IT traditionally has been considered as an expense, right? It's an entity that is expected to consume an investment. So, from an overall perspective, that has been a traditional thought process, but this thought process has now been transferred into visualizing IT as a value creation tool. So basically, stakeholder value creation is an attribute wherein you realize the benefit at an optimal resource cost. At the same time, you're optimizing the risk. And this is often driven by a high degree of digitization in the new business models, how efficient processes are in place, how do you enforce successful innovations, etc. So you will find that these digitized enterprises are increasingly dependent on IT for survival and growth. So given the centrality of the IT for enterprise risk management and value generation, a specific focus on the governance of enterprise IT kind of has emerged over the last couple of decades, and it is and you will find that the governance of enterprise IT has now become, a key component within the overall corporate governance that the organizations typically kind of deliver through their board. So you will find that enterprise of governance of IT is exercised by the board that kind of has an oversight of the definition and implementation of the processes that are required, the org structures that needs to be in place, and the relational mechanisms within the organization that could enable both the business and IT people to execute the responsibilities in support of business and IT alignment, and basically creating the business value from IT enabled investments, right? So, uh, so so IT governance is complex and multi-faced. There is no silver this thing spoon that could basically steer the IT overall this thing. Yeah. So IT governance is complex and multi-faced. There's no silver bullet or ideal way of designing, implementing, and maintaining effective enterprise of governance IT within an organization. As such, members of the governing boards and senior management typically need to kind of scope and tailor their enterprise governance of IT measures and implementation to their own specific context and requirements. Okay. At the same time, there must be also willingness to accept more accountability for IT to kind of drive a different mindset and a culture to kind of extract the best value of the IT. So there is a transformation needed in terms of how to, um, visualize IT rather than being an expense to a tool to generate value, because a lot of the things that gets automated brings in process efficiency, brings in uh, reduced risk profile, brings in more enhanced productivity and greater time to market. So these are some of the value delivery factors that needs to be kind of communicated to the leadership uh, who is kind of trying to extract the value of the IT related investment. Okay. So one of the core resources or the frameworks that you can refer or kind of consider while designing your governance of IT structure within the organization from a leadership standpoint, from a board standpoint, um, you can you don't need to reinvent the wheel. So there has been sufficient amount of research done through independent contributors across the industry landscape. There are multiple frameworks that are available that can aid or guide you in implementing this exercise. Um, One of the most common and widely used framework is the COBIT framework, which in its latest iteration has been published in 2019. Okay. So before kind of describing this COBIT framework, it is important to kind of understand like what this COBIT framework is and what it is not. Okay. So at its core, COBIT is a framework for governance and management of enterprise IT. Um, Aimed at the entire enterprise, not at a specific division like an infrastructure or an application or a risk management, etc. It is aimed at the entire enterprise. So enterprise IT kind of refers to all the technology and information processing the enterprise kind of puts in place to achieve its goals, regardless of where it happens in the enterprise. It might be happening in the finance department, um, it might be happening in the finance department, it might be happening in the uh, business departments, irrespective of where it happens. Enterprise IT. Uh, Basically, the COBIT framework kind of makes a clear distinction between two things. One is a governance, and the other one is the management. So, governance and management. Governance kind of ensures that the needs of your stakeholders, the end consumers, it can be internal, it can be external, does not matter, but the needs of the stakeholders, the conditions, and the options um, are evaluated to kind of ensure the organization delivers a balanced and an agreed upon enterprise objectives. So it is where the board of directors come into picture. They are designed, I mean, they are expected to design a direction around the investments that are to be done in the IT portfolios. Uh, and then um, come up with the prioritization strategy in terms of, like, say for an example, you decide to go with do away with your internal data centers and go with a cloud only strategy. So how to prioritize, which are the areas to be prioritized, how to ensure decisions are independently made to kind of ensure investments are allocated, resources are optimized, and risks is clearly identified and addressed, right? And the third expectation out of a governance objective is to kind of um, design performance and compliance. Okay, so as a requirement of the governance, you need to establish or at least accredited internal policy framework that the organization needs to be up following on, design or at least approve the processes that are need to be in place in order to kind of ensure everything works according to a specific structure, and supporting procedures are to be kind of established. And therefore, to kind of ensure these design policy processes and procedures are operating as effectively they are expected to operate on the ground, you need to come up with some of the metrics in terms of evaluating and monitoring the performance and validating compliance against the directions and objectives that you have established through a governance structure. So that is what the governance is all about. It's about setting the direction, it's about setting the rules of the road, it's about ensuring the stakeholders who are the direct consumers of the products that you are creating, for them are appropriately getting the right value out of it. Whereas the management uh, takes in the inputs from the directions that are set by the governance and transforms them into plan, and builds, runs, and monitors the activities in alignment with the governance body and the directions that are set through the enterprise objectives. Okay, you will find in most of these enterprises, management is a responsibility of the executive leadership within the organization under the leadership of the um, of the CEOs and the structures behind the executive leadership. So COBIT essentially defines the components to kind of build and sustain a governance systems in terms of designing or defining what should be the processes in place, what should be the org structures in place for managing a complex IT enterprise, what are the design policies and procedures must be in place, how the information should be flowing, throughout the enterprise, who should be knowing what, who should not be knowing what, how to ensure there is a culture established where people within the organization embrace changes throughout the entire operating model, if there is a requirement that calls for it. A behavior component needs to be enhanced where change is accepted, change is adapted. People are comfortable to speak about change, people are comfortable to speak about risk, um, and uh, and that kind of is an outcome of having an comprehensive or a mature governance of enterprise IT. At the same time, the resources that are implemented needs to be kind of appropriately optimized so that you know you can increase its efficiency. Like with limited resources, you will never find a CFO stating that they have unlimited budget for the IT investment portfolios. Therefore, you need to kind of ensure that whatever limited resources that you are provided with are used judiciously and optimized and in an optimized manner, so that multiple business processes can be kind of delivered through efficient utilization of the resources. At the same time, the people who are one of your strongest resources within the organization, uh, their skills are constantly enhanced to meet the demands of the emerging IT landscape with the new technologies that are coming into place. Um, if you find these COVID documents, it clearly defines the design factors that should be considered by the enterprise to kind of build a best fit governance system. And this COVID kind of addresses governance issues by kind of grouping these relevant governance components into governance and management objectives that could be managed to the required capability levels. Uh, so from a COBIT standpoint, which is one of the well-known and most widely used governance of enterprise IT framework, there has been some misconception, and it is important to kind of dispel those. First of all, it is not a full description of the whole IT environment of an enterprise. Again, it is very generic. It needs to be scoped and tailored as per the requirements of your enterprise and its complexities. It is not a framework that should be considered to organize your business processes. It is more designed towards IT objectives, right? Um, and it is not a framework to manage all the technology. It is about designing a process framework or a procedure framework or a policy framework to ensure your technology controls are appropriately operating. It is not about designing the controls from a technical standpoint. For those use cases, there are other frameworks available, like ISO has this 27,000 framework that is defining a use case for what should be an information security management system. ITIL has designed a framework that discusses about the baseline IT business as usual processes like change management, problem management, incident management, etc. However, COBIT is a framework that helps the board of directors or the leadership within the organization to come up with a comprehensive structure for managing a complex enterprise within from an IT standpoint. Okay. Again, COBIT is not expected to prescribe any IT related decisions. It will not decide what is the best IT strategy, what is the best architecture is, or how much IT can or should cost. Rather, COBIT, if you are referring for designing an enterprise IT, it should be defining all the components that could help you describe which decisions are to be taken and how and by whom they should be taken. Having stated that, the next concept is about understanding what are the principles that makes a governance framework, right? So a governance framework basically should be kind of based on a conceptual model, identifying what are the key components that should be included within a governance of IT framework, and what are the relationships between the components. So, if you ask me the key components, again, we will be kind of discussing, in detail about them in a later section. But at a high level, key components are your people, processes, and technology, and what is the relationship that governs these interactions, and how do you maximize consistency and allow the automations to kick in to ensure the IT deliverables are more optimized from a risk standpoint, are more optimized from a resource utilization standpoint, and how optimized from a value delivery standpoint, right? So, uh, again, a governance framework should not be rigid, it should not be tight, it should be open, and it should be flexible. It and in a sense, it should allow the addition of new content. It should allow the addition of new business processes. It should allow the addition of new technology parameters, the emerging technologies that are coming into the fore, and it should be able to address any new issues that are emerging in the most flexible way, at the same time maintaining what you would call as integrity and consistency of dealing with issues. So it should not be rigid. It should not be averse to changes. It should be open. It should be aggressive to changes, and it should basically maintain this in a standard, unique, and repeatable manner. So, from a governance framework, it should also tie along with relevant major related standards, frameworks, and regulations. Basically, for example, your NIST frameworks or the ISO frameworks, etc., or the legal regulatory requirements from a GDPR standpoint, or there are other legal requirements that stem um, through individual countries, like HIPAA, for an example, in the United States relative to the healthcare industry. And there are multiple legal constraints or standards which are placed. So your governance structure or the governance of enterprise IT should be kind of aligned to the legal constraints as well as the requirements mandated through the major industry accepted standards. So the components within the governance of enterprise IT must be working in coherence to align itself against the major standards that are existing within the industry. So, this is a high level overview of the COVID framework that has been prescribed for designing of the governance of enterprise structure. It is open-ended and is having a space for customization. There are three major publications that COVID-19 has in terms of um, supporting this design. First, basically, the governance and management objectives, which kind of comprehensively describes the 40 governance and management objectives, some of which we will be discussing in this particular webinar, and the processes that are contained inside of it, and other related components. This is a guide that you can download from. Uh, this is a guide that you can download from the um, ISACA website. Then there is this another design guide which kind of uh, explores design factors which can influence governance and includes a workflow for planning a tailored governance system for the enterprise. At a high level, we will discuss some of these components in this webinar today. And there's another component which is called as the implementation guide for optimizing IT governance solution, which kind of represents the evolution of implementation and develops a roadmap for continuous governance improvement. So it can be something that can be used along with the design guide. So all these documents are available in ISACA website. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. If you have membership, you might get it at a discounted price and kind of use or leverage them um, for your requirement. Uh, so so basically the COVID 2019 is based on the requirements of COVID iteration 5 and other authoritative sources. It is aligned to a number of standards and framework. The analysis of the relevant related standards and COVID alignment to them, and under the COVID's established position of being an umbrella IT governance framework, because you can easily tailor it as per the um, different industry standards or benchmarks like NIST or ISO to kind of implement the standards or controls that are designed through them under the umbrella of the governance structures that are um, uh, designed through the COVID framework. So at a high level, this framework will tell you how to establish an enterprise strategy, and from there come up with a listing of enterprise goals, align it according to the size of the industry that you're operating from a startup to a large multinational conglomerate. Um, establish what is the role IT has to be playing in order to kind of implementing a comprehensive outcome of the business objectives. What are the sourcing strategies that needs to be followed for resource optimization within the IT landscape? What are the compliance requirements that you have to be considerate of from a governance perspective, like the regulatory requirements and other external complexities that needs to be compliant with. So, um, so basically, it has multiple focus areas that can be utilized by the subject matter experts, the information security department within the organization, the enterprise risk management departments within the organization, the departments who are responsible for managing DevOps or DevSecOps, etc., uh, by paying attention or prioritizing governance and management objectives with specific guidance that can be leveraged from the focus areas. And it also tells you in detail about how to evaluate or measure the performances of uh, the operational activities by evaluating against the strategic components that are established. All right. Having stated that, uh, um, it is extremely important to understand one concept, and it is that IT exists to support business, and it is not the other way around. So, business does not exist to support IT. So, um, IT should not be a constraint for the business to deliver their outcomes. So, depending upon the type of the industry that you are operating on, be it in a manufacturing industry, be it in a research and development industry, be it into the product lifecycle management industry, be it education industry, be it healthcare industry, does not matter. The outcomes or the expected business lines and the business products that the organization requires to be delivering it to their consumers, IT solutions must be designed in alignment with the IT solution must be designed in alignment with those requirements to kind of deliver the outcomes of the businesses, right? Now, for IT to kind of contribute towards enterprise goals, a number of governance and management objectives must be achieved. So basic concept relating to the governance and management objectives are, you might need to understand that governance and management objectives must be related to a governance process. Okay, the one that is kind of illustrated in the dark blue background here, right? While uh, management objectives basically relates to a management objectives that are required to be kind of delivered, right? So boards and executive management are typically accountable for the ones here in the governance processes, whereas management processes are the domain of your senior management or the middle management within the organization. Essentially, the deliverables or accountability around these expectations rests with the executive leadership within the organization. Now, now the governance and the management objectives of the COBIT are grouped into five domains. The domains have names with verbs that kind of expresses the key purpose and the areas of the activities or the objectives which are contained within them. So the governance objectives are grouped into evaluate, direct, and monitoring. Um, evaluate, direct, and monitoring of the activities domain. In this domain, the governing body evaluates what are its strategic options that are available to them, directs the senior management on the chosen strategic option, and monitors the achievement of that particular strategy. Under the management objectives, this is broken down into four domains. As you can see, there are four boxes in here. Uh, and those four domains are basically, one is align, plan, and organize, basically with the abbreviation APO, which is the box here. Uh, which kind of addresses the overall organization, um, or the enterprise, the strategy, and the supporting activities for IT. We'll go into the details about some of these management objectives in subsequent slides. Then the second domain is about build, acquire, and implement. So this is the domain that treats the definition, the acquisition, and implementation of IT solutions and their integration within the business processes. And the third domain from a management standpoint is about um, deliver service and support, and has an abbreviation of DSS. This addresses the operational delivery and support of IT activities, including that of your information security and enterprise risk management. And then the vertical domain that kind of addresses the requirements of all three horizontal domains are the domain which is titled as MEA, and MEA stands for monitor, evaluate, and assess. Right? It addresses performance monitoring and compliance requirements of IT against the policies that are established from an organizational standpoint, against the internal performance targets, the internal control objectives, and external compliance requirements. So this is what COBIT is designed. This is how the COBIT is designed to kind of establish a roadmap for implementing certain strategic objectives to ensure that IT deliverables or the value delivered by the IT investments are aligned with the expectations and requirements of the organization's business. Right? So, uh, having stated that, um, it can be further extrapolated into implementing or implementation standpoint by designing what are the key components and how they are to be interacting within each other. Now, we've discussed about the governance objectives, which is the EDM, and the management objectives under the four domains that are created in there. So to satisfy the governance and management objectives within the organization, each enterprise kind of needs to establish, uh, then tailor, uh, and sustain what you would call a governance system that needs to be consistently containing a number of components within it. So these are the factors, these components are the factors that individually and collectively contribute to the to well designed operations within of the enterprise's governance system over IT. Now, components have to interact with each other, resulting in a holistic governance system for IT. And components can be of various different types. The most familiar are the processes, the ones that is listed out here. However, components of a governance system also include the organizational structures that needs to be in place to kind of execute the deliverables of the IT, specific principles, policies, and procedures that needs to be established from an implementation standpoint, to designing certain mandatory requirements from an IT policy standpoint, from an information security policy standpoint, from a governance policy standpoint. All those policies and procedures must be defined. Information is a key. the variable that differentiate data against information is data can be available everywhere, but when it is contextualized, it becomes information where you can run analytics and identifies ways to optimize your outcomes and deliverables through the IT. So how information is collected, how information architecture is designed, how information solutions are performing is something that needs to be established and implemented. um, uh, uh, um, One of the other component is the culture, as I have alluded to before, is about ensuring the organization is open to changes, open to continuous improvement initiatives, open to demonstrate awareness around reporting risks that are emerging through the operational activities, open to kind of embrace change within the organization. So that kind of behavioral ethics is something that needs to be designed and developed as a part of a governance requirement. And then invest in people skills and competencies, infrastructures and applications. These are required for good decisions, execution of corrective actions, and successful completion of activities. um, then you've got this mm, uh, um, the services, infrastructures, and applications, which include the infrastructure, technology, and applications that provides the enterprise with the governance of IT processing. And all of these components can be generic or can be a variant of a generic component. So the generic components are something that we kind of discussed in the previous slide and apply in principle to any situation. However, they are generic in nature and generally would require fair bit of customization before being practically implemented. Whereas the variants are based on um, um, uh, variances are based on generic components but are tailored for a specific purpose or context within a focus area. Example, for information security, for DevOps, or for a particular regulatory expectation requirement. Like, say for an example, if I am taking this components and and I have to kind of develop a compliance framework against the GDPR requirements, then I will basically understand what are the processes that are impacted by GDPR requirements. To comply with GDPR requirements, what is the org structure that I need to put in place? Do I need to establish specific policies and procedures that are needs to be implemented in order to comply with the legal requirements? What should be my information structure? Whom I should be sharing with? What restrictions should I be applying with? How do I encourage people uh, to ensure they exercise due diligence while sharing information, specifically PII? What kind of resources that I need to be hiring in to kind of allow me run a data privacy program so that I can comply with the GDPR requirements? What kind of tools that I need to be running in for executing activities like data protection impact assessment, or data transfer impact assessment, or record of processing activities, which are core requirements out of the GDPR components there. So all these things can be customized as per the individual requirement. Is what I am trying to say here. So um, so depending upon the focus areas, which kind of describes a certain governance topic, domain, or an issue that needs to be addressed by a collection of governance and management objectives and their components. um, some of the examples of the focus areas could be including small and medium enterprises, cybersecurity, digital transformation initiatives, cloud computing expectations, data privacy, um, uh, um, DevOps, etc. And focus areas might be containing a combination of generic governance components and some of the tailored variants that are emerging out of it. So Then you've got some of these design factors. Now, design factors are the factors which can influence the design of an enterprise's governance system and position it for the success in the usage of IT components in there. So, the potential impacts design factors can have on the governance systems are in this particular diagram. We can go through some of them, but if you want a detailed analysis of how to implement or design a governance of enterprise IT, as I have stated in one of the previous slides, you can go and download the COVID 2019 design guide that kind of has the detailed procedures that you can leverage for designing a governance of enterprise IT structure. So, design factors can include any combination of the ones that are discussed here. We'll discuss some of them in detail. So one of the design factor that needs to be considered while creating or designing a governance of enterprise IT structure is enterprise strategy. As I have stated before, IT exists to support business and it is not the other way around. So enterprises can have different strategies which can be expressed as one or more of the archetypes that are kind of shown in this particular figure here. um, uh, so basically, it can have a growth or an acquisition strategy in terms of organization looking to increase the revenues, in terms of looking to establish a market leadership, position themselves as a strong player in the economic landscape, in or demonstrate their capabilities or enhance their outcomes through the acquisitions, mergers, and all those use cases in there. So that could be one of the enterprise strategy. There could be another strategy that basically is targeting towards innovation, or that could differentiate that enterprise from the similar organizations offering similar products in the enterprise. Now this could be one of us enterprise strategy. And then there's this cost leadership, specifically in the times that we are currently living in, where there is increased focus on budgetary constraints due to the economic due to the economic factors we are operating with. Organizations are looking to find ways to reduce cost. That is one enterprise strategy that could influence the design of your governance of enterprise IT. And then there is this client or services stability, right? Uh, you will find that uh, specifically in the services industry, people tend to address the requirements of a host of clients. How you deliver or how you come up with a standard, unique, repeatable, consistent strategy to meet the requirements of your clientele, and demonstrate stability in the way you provide your services back to your clients. Now, as you can imagine, each of these different strategy kind of is from an enterprise level, targeted towards specific outcomes, while these strategies can be taken in as an input or a design criteria for developing your governance of enterprise IT from within the organization. This is some of a precursor that can be used for tailoring requirements of the internal organization's governance IT structures. Likewise, at the same time, you need to be also aware of certain enterprise goals that must be supporting the enterprise strategy. So now enterprise strategy is realized by the achievement of a set of enterprise goals, right? The strategies is what we discussed. Supporting those strategy, you need to have something called as a goal. So these goals would also have their influence in the design of governance of enterprise IT. Again, this is something uh, that needs to be considered, that these goals are designed along the balance scorecard dimensions, and include certain elements, right? Like, say, for an example, financial focus, customer focus, internal focus, or growth focus. So you will find that these enterprise goals are abbreviated through the acronym EG. And there are few goals that we will be discussing, but these goals from a financial standpoint can basically involve defining a portfolio of competitive products and services. Now, if your business is in the manufacturing sector, faster time to market, ensuring the relevant quality that has to be delivered, etc., can be a portfolio of products. You can also, if you're in a research and development, focused innovation, consistent innovation, um, could be one of the portfolio of the products. If you're in the IT services industry, consistent growth in specific verticals and towers, like banking, or retail or healthcare, etc., could be a portfolio of competitive products and services. This could be one of the enterprise goals supporting the strategy that we discussed in the previous slide. And then you can have a managed business risk in terms of uh, you know absorbing or adapting your organization's outcome against the external factors for which you will have limited control over. Comply with external laws and regulations, because that allows you the right to do a business in a specific geography where you would like to operate with. And then the quality of financial information that needs to be included into the report, like the financial reports, is one of the compliance parameters that you need to be demonstrating if you're registered in the stock exchanges as per the Sarbanes-Oxley requirement or the SOX requirements. Likewise, from an enterprise goal, if you target the customers as one of the balance scorecard dimension, then you need to have a customer oriented service culture. You should be implementing a structure relative to the customer satisfaction criteria, evaluating the metrics around the data inputs provided through CSAT values, ensure there is continuity and availability of the business services, and an appropriate quality of the management information that you operate with, or you are providing the management to kind of ensure they make the necessary and appropriate decisions that are required from their organization standpoint. Then there's this internal focus, where you optimize internal business functionality, business process functionality, by kind of ensuring that the resources are judiciously used, the risks are appropriately addressed, the value is consistently measured, so that the business processes that are required are optimized in their deliverables. The optimization of the business process costs, basically, if unmanaged, the business processes and the IT processes that are supporting a particular business process, then the cost can escalate quickly and at a significant pace. So how do you manage those process costs? How do you ensure that the staff skills are nurtured? There is a motivation for learning and providing the right level of productivity. This could be one of these enterprise goals, supporting enterprise strategies, validating compliance against the internal policies and the day-to-day operations, could be one of the internal this thing goals and enterprise goals. And then there is this growth targeted enterprise goals, basically about having a managed digital transformation program, having an operating model that supports these digital transformation products programs within the organization. There is consistent innovation in terms of how your product and businesses are delivering their deliverables to their outcomes. Now, this is another design factor. So enterprise strategy is one of the design factor. Enterprise goal supporting strategy is the second design factor that is required to support the governance of enterprise IT structure. Likewise, um, the risk profile of the enterprise and the current issues in relation to the IT. Basically, the risk profile kind of identifies the sort of IT related risk to which enterprise is currently exposed to, and indicates which areas of risks are exceeding the risk appetite that is established by the organization. Now, it is important at this point of time to understand the differences between risk appetite, risk tolerance, and risk appetite, risk tolerance, and the third one is risk capacity. Imagine you've got $10 that you could invest in stock exchange, of which um, $7 is what you're comfortable, and $3 is what you want to keep it as a buffer for any rainy day, as a saving. Depending upon the market situation, you can go up to 7.5 or 6.5. So basically, investing in a stock exchange is a risk, with an opportunity to increase your investment, or a risk that you kind of might be losing out your investment as well. So this is the $7 is the amount of risk that you're willing to take. This is the maximum risk that you can take. That is, the $10 is the maximum amount that you have to invest. And depending upon the market situation and circumstances, you can increase or decrease it as per your requirement. Now, question is, uh, the maximum amount of risk that the organization can take is its risk capacity. And then the amount of risk that the organization is willing to take is its risk appetite. And the variances from the risk appetite is your risk tolerance. And so basically, these are the three things that one needs to be considerate of, in terms of evaluating the risk profile of the organization. Now, from a board of directors standpoint, it is one of their key deliverable to define the risk appetite depending upon the market situation, depending upon the opportunities that they are exploring, depending upon the strategies that they want to take, depending upon the goals that they have supporting those strategies. The risk appetite is something that the organization's leadership has to design and associate. And once this is designed at a higher level, so if you're a risk aggressive organization, you will have an low risk appetite, and you can absorb more risk. You will have a high risk appetite and you can absorb more risk. And if you are a risk averse organization like that of a banking and an insurance sector industry, you need to have an extremely low risk appetite, and you need to invest more in your control posture to kind of ensure that the identified risk appetite is appropriately addressed. So the risk profile of the enterprise, and the current issues can basically be stemming in from different use cases, like um, uh, IT investment decision in terms of which are the IT areas that needs to be invested on, which are the IT areas where investment needs to be pulled out, how to develop or define what you would call as a portfolio. That is something that needs to be kind of considered from a portfolio standpoint. Then you need to be kind of understanding the concerns or the roadblocks that are coming up while implementing the life cycle of your existing IT programs, like say for an example, a cloud migration program or digital transformation program, or operational centralization program. So the challenges and risks emerging out of those life cycle management activities, uh, the cost and oversight and governance, because as you can imagine that most organizations of late have gone in from an internal data center strategy to a cloud only strategy where they host their workloads in the cloud platform. with limited oversight and risks coming out of shadow IT had extrapolated their IT budgets. Therefore, IT cost and oversight could be one of the risk profile design factor. The skills of the employees supporting IT activities, the complexity of the IT architecture could be a risk profile design factor. The number of incidents that are being observed on an operational standpoint on the infrastructure and applications could be one of the risk profile design factor. Some of the unauthorized activities, non-adherence to change management from an operational BAU activity could be a risk profile there. The usage problems with enterprise applications that are being provided, some of the incidents from an hardware that you are using, some of the software failures that you are seeing in some of the information security logical attacks that you might be observing, some of the third party or supplier level incidents that because the suppliers doesn't deliver the product, your non-compliance against legal requirements, some of the geopolitical issues, geopolitical issues where requires the organization's corporation staff to prove their stand towards it. Some of the industrial actions, natural disasters, restricted technology based innovations, environmental factors, data and information management. All of these, are the relevant risk categories that could be influencing the overall enterprise. Um, that could be, having an influence of the overall enterprise, the governance of enterprise IT. So this could be the third design factor that influences the overall activity there. At the same time, some of the issues is what you need to be also aware of from a leadership standpoint while implementing governance of enterprise IT. Like say for an example, there could be frustration from the uh, this is basically the frustration between the different IT entities because of a politically charged environment, because of a perception of a low contribution to business value. The frustration between the different business departments and the IT department because businesses' expectations are different while the IT deliverables are different. And resulting in a failed initiatives or a perception of a low contribution to business value. And the third is significant IT related incident like data breaches, security breaches, project failure, and application areas, etc. And then you've got this service delivery problems by the IT service providers, specifically if you are outsourcing some of these activities and you are dependent on a third party vendor to kind of provide certain services and they are not providing the services against the designed SLAs, then that could be one of the factor. You are observing an increasing trend in the internal and external audit findings. There is substantial IT spending that's not documented by the department outside the control of the normal IT investment decision mechanisms and appropriate budgets, like the business units themselves going out making those IT investments, resulting in an issue of shadow IT or something like that. Um, Duplication or overlaps between various initiatives basically resulting in wasted resources. Like very genuine example is a use case where um, you know um, your organization is very decentralized, like different countries doing the same task by procuring different products, right? Resulting in inefficient utilization. Therefore there will be licensing constraint, management overhead, and multiple other use cases. Some of the behavioral concepts coming out from the staffing that you have with inadequate skills or burnout or dissatisfaction. You have insufficient IT resources. Um, your projects are not delivered within the defined timelines on and as per the design scope and within the design budget. right? And then you have a reluctance from the board members and executives and senior management to kind of engage with the IT people on the downstream, or you don't have the necessary backing of the leadership to execute some business initiatives. That could be one of the IT issues. You have an extremely complex IT operating model, as they say. Complexity is enemy of security. The more standard, straightforward, flat org structure you have in your IT department, the more efficient and effective your IT process deliverables are. Um, uh, then then there is this gaps between business and technical knowledge in terms of the expectations or the requirements and feasibility from an IT standpoint. Uh, there are regular issues in terms of data quality and integrations across various sources, leading to the interoperability issues. um, High levels of end user computing, allowing people to install their own set of applications on their end user devices with limited oversight, and therefore you'll have limited number of controls on the application posture. There is an ignorance of the regulatory components, which is one of the biggest risks that you will be facing in terms of allowing you to do a business in specific areas. And then an ability to adopt new technologies like artificial intelligence, data analytics, big data, machine learning, in order to kind of optimize your output or the value that you're creating of IT. Now these are some of these, it is not exhaustive. It is these are some of the IT related issues um, uh, coming out of the IT risk assessments for the enterprise, which can be considered to identify the IT related issues the organization and enterprise could face, um, um, or in other words, what IT related risk has materialized. So this can be one of the design factors that could be contributing towards the design of governance of enterprise IT. The same time, the threat landscape you are operating with can basically have its influence on the design of governance of enterprise IT as well. Like, say, for an example, the enterprise is operating under an extremely charged geopolitical situation, like the ones that, for an example, in the Russia-Ukraine war or Israel-Palestine war. Then uh, the organizations might be subjected to multiple nation state attacks. Therefore, they have an extremely high threat landscape to deal with. Whereas on a normal timeline, the organization would be operating under the normal threat profile. So threats are nothing but a negative event. Like, it can be malware attack, it can be a natural hazard, it can be anything that has a negative consequence on the organization, and can be coming in from internal factors as well as from the external factors. And these external threats are something that you will sometimes have limited control over, like, say, for an example, your zero-day threats or zero-day attacks, for which there is no information about the solution or the patches. So those are the factors that one need to be also considerate of while designing a comprehensive governance of enterprise IT solution from the organization standpoint. Again, I have stated it before as well, that the regulatory requirements, like, say, for an example, GDPR, or if you are operating in the US, then you might need to be compliant uh, with um, um, with the HIPAA requirements, which is Health Insurance Privacy and Portability Act, Children Online Privacy and Portability Act, the Federal Information Security Management Act. There are requirements which are contingent on the geography where you're doing business on. So the compliance requirement can be also further bucketed down into major categories in terms of low compliance requirements, where the enterprise might be subjected to minimal set of regulatory compliance requirements, depending upon the type of the business. Like, say, for an example, a retail industry might not be subjected to as much as rigorous compliance requirement as compared to that uh, of a healthcare industry, or any industry that deals with extremely sensitive, personally identifiable information that could have data privacy implications there. So these are some of those things that could also be a contributing factor from a design of governance enterprise standpoint. Now, at the same time, what is the strategy your organization is adopting to deliver its products, in the quickest possible time to your internal business stakeholders, and in general, from the business stakeholders to their, and end user clients, or the external stakeholders. Now, for doing that, IT might be adopting different approaches in terms of going through an agile approach for developing the softwares and application, having a DevOps mechanism for building, deploying, and operating the applications in the production environment, or uses a classical waterfall model where you come up with the requirements, and then come up with the feasibility assessment, then design, then develop, and then test and implement it, and then sunset it using a linear approach. That could be a factor there. Or our enterprise might be using a mixture of the traditional and modern IT implementation methods as well. Now, depending on what implementation methods that you are using in within the organization, could also be one of the design factor that could be contributing towards your governance of enterprise IT requirement in there. And the last but not the least, as I have stated, this is not an exhaustive list. These are only a few of the design listing that COBIT has prescribed. The size of the organization could also be a design factor, as I have stated. If you are operating out of a startup industry, then you are catering to the requirement of a limited number of individuals within a particular location, whereas some organizations are giant and have their operations spanned across multiple geographies, with thousands or even lakhs of people to deal with, and from their perspective, the the governance complexity and challenges are different as well, and is one of the factors which contributes towards the governance of enterprise IT use cases in there. Um, so these are some of the constraints, some of the I would not say, some of the factors that you need to be considerate of while designing governance of enterprise IT structure within the organization there. Now, one of the key things that you need to be aware of while creating a governance of enterprise IT structure is about ensuring what you would call as a strategic alignment with the business requirement. As I have stated before, IT exists to support business, and it is not the other way around. So stakeholders' needs have to be transformed into an enterprise's actionable strategy. So basically, if a stakeholder says that I have to innovate, I have to ensure faster time to market, I have to ensure appropriate quality service products, that is their requirements. Now this needs to be transformed into an enterprise actionable strategy. And as I have stated, strategy must be supported with what is called as an enterprise goals, and from the one of the previous slides. So the goals cascades basically supports the enterprise goal, which is one of the key design factors for a governance system. It supports the prioritization of the management objective based on the prioritization of the enterprise goals. So these goals basically cascade down to higher level of granularity. So the stakeholders, drivers, and requirements basically cascade down to the design and development of the enterprise goals that needs to be supporting specific strategy, and those enterprise goals cascade further downstream to support translation of enterprise goals into priorities for alignment goals, and the goals alignment goals uh, uh, further cascade down to governance and management objectives. Right. These are something which we will be discussing in the subsequent slides. um, so the alignment goals kind of emphasizes the um, uh, alignment of all the IT efforts with the business objectives. Okay. Um, so having stated that, it is important to kind of understand the balanced scorecard dimension, as we have stated in one of the previous slides. If you remember, the enterprise goals basically were broken down into four this thing like financial, customer, growth, internal requirements. These balanced scorecard dimensions are basically created to kind of support or evaluate the performance of the invested entities within the IT, the enterprise IT. So basically, you will find that the financial and the learning and processes and customer, these are the four major areas, I would rather put it in this way, by using which you can optimize or review the IT performance as well as design your IT goals accordingly in alignment with these expectations. So this is basically a precursor to what we will be discussing in understanding how the cascading model that we discussed in the previous slide is actually operating to kind of ensure the strategic alignment within the organization against the business requirements. So these enterprise goals basically can be like, say for an example, what we discussed is you can have a portfolio of competitive products and services. Now you have to also kind of develop metrics in terms of evaluating whether this particular enterprise goals is achieving the desired objectives. So those metrics that could be supporting this particular enterprise goal would be the number of or the percentage of products and services that meet or exceeds the targets in terms of revenues, in terms of market share, the customer satisfaction targets, the competitive advantage, time to market for new products and services. Likewise, for managed business risk, you can design metrics in terms of the percentage of critical business objectives and services that are covered by your risk assessments, the incidents that were not identified via risk assessment but they were actually existing, the frequency of the update of the risk profile, um, compliance with external regulatory requirements, the number of non-compliance issues that you are facing in, from a regulatory standpoint, from an operational standpoint, the quality of financial information like the CSAT results, the cost of regulatory non-compliance that you have to be dealing with. So these are all financial enterprise goals. Likewise, you have customer-oriented enterprise goals. Again, you can keep a tab on the number of customer service disruptions you are facing, number of business stakeholders that are impacted, number of customer complaints that you are facing in, the trends of the results coming out of the CSATs could be one of the metric. Um, and then business service continuity and availability standpoint is number of business interruptions you are facing, the number of cost incidents you are facing, the complaints of downtime that you're receiving, and at the same time quality of management information could be the enterprise goals as well, and can have similar metrics. So stakeholder needs to be transformed into enterprise goals, and these are some of these enterprise goals, and the applicable metrics that can be used to evaluate the enterprise goals, right? There are other enterprise goals as well, in terms of optimization of internal business process functionality, where you evaluate the satisfaction levels of the board and executive management in terms of the business processes that are in place, the satisfaction level of customers with service delivery capabilities, the satisfaction level of suppliers with supply chain capabilities, and at the same time you can evaluate the optimization of the business process cost, that is, take a ratio of the cost versus achieved service levels, and then understand the staff skills, motivation, and productivity there, by understanding the percentage of staff whose skills are insufficient relative to the competencies required for that particular roles. What is the percentage of satisfied staff? What is the staff productivity compared to the industry benchmarks against your competitors, etc.? Level of stakeholder satisfaction, certain compliance with internal policies, you depending upon the managed digital transformation programs, product and business innovation. So all of these enterprise goals can be kind of created from understanding what are the stakeholders requirements are. And once these enterprise goals are created, once these evaluated I mean the metrics to evaluate enterprise goals are created, then you can expand them to create what you would call as your alignment goal. So enterprise goals basically cascade to the alignment goals, which kind of contains the set of alignment goals and example metrics. Now these alignment goals can also be bucketed down into specific balanced scorecard dimensions, like financial, internal growth, customer, etc. So if you are looking at a financial balance scorecard dimension, then supporting your enterprise goal, you need to have an alignment goal, business alignment goal. So you can have uh, an IT compliance and support for business compliance with external laws and regulations. So there are certain metrics that can be designed specific to IT, right? Basically, here we are looking for an IT compliance that could help the business to comply with their regulatory components there, right? So as say for an example, um, uh, you are an industry that are operating in the European Union and are having and operating an application that is processing a PII information. Now, if this application complies with their operations in the way that complies with the GDPR requirement, then organizations' business deliverable in general will be complying with their compliance expectation as well. So it is therefore important that a alignment goal must be assigned to the enterprise goals that are created in the previous step. So here you can come up with certain metrics from an IT evaluation perspective, like what is the cost of IT non-compliance, what are the number of IT non-compliance issues reported, that has caused reputational loss, settlements, fines, and you know contractual contractual issues, or civil litigations, etc. At the same time, you can have a alignment goal from an IT standpoint relative to having a managed IT related risk, by ensuring you have an appropriate frequency of update of the IT risk profile, um, uh, uh, ensuring that enterprise risk assessments are carried out by considering IT related risk, and validating whether all IT incidents are considered within the IT risk expectations there. And you can also have an alignment goal wherein you can evaluate the realized benefits of IT enabled investments and service portfolio, um, by evaluating the percentage of IT enabled investment for which the benefits to business cases are met or in fact exceeded. um, uh, where you can also evaluate the percentage of IT services for which the expected benefits as stated in SLAs are being realized as well. You can evaluate the quality of technology related information by evaluating the CSAT levels that you're coming in, or reporting from transparency, understanding, and accuracy of IT financial information. You can evaluate the delivery of the IT services in line with the business requirement by validating how many business disruptions you are having, how satisfied your business stakeholders are. You can have a criteria or alignment goals, IT alignment goals, by designing a parameter to ensure there is agility or quicker time to market to turn business requirements into operational solutions. Um, uh, uh, where you evaluate average time to market for new IT related services and application, average time to turn strategic objectives into agreed upon initiatives, and a number of business processes that are supported by up-to-date infrastructure and application. These are all going to be demonstrating how agile you are to kind of adapt yourself to changing business requirements there. Security of IT information infrastructure application and data privacy concerns could be one of the alignment goal that needs to be created to support one of the enterprise goals. Um, Again, by observing the number of confidentiality, integrity, and availability related incidents that are being reported there. um, um, and one of the other alignment goals could be about integrating applications and enabling and supporting business processes by integrating specific application and technology components. You can have an alignment goal around the delivery of the programs on time, on budget, and within the scope. So scope, budget, and timelines are key risk factors that could be impacting the IT overall deliverables to the business thing. If you are able to deliver your outcomes in the fastest time, within the scope that has been agreed upon, and within the budget that you have defined for that, with the required level of quality parameters addressed, then you are aligning your IT initiatives into the enterprise goals that could meet the stakeholders' requirements. So these are some of the alignment goals, and then you have got these objectives. So going back to that same cascade in there, stakeholders requirements drive the design of enterprise goal. The enterprise goals drive the design of IT alignment goals, in terms of what IT should be doing from a goal standpoint. And once that is established, then certain management objectives must be kind of defined, in terms of uh, ensuring that there is an ensured governance framework which is established and is maintained to kind of provide a consistent approach which is integrated and aligned with the enterprise governance approach. All IT related decisions are made in line with enterprise strategies and objectives, and the desired value is realized to kind of ensure that there is appropriate level of oversight in terms of IT deliverable, and the board is aware of the outcomes of it. Then you have another objectives that could ensure the benefits that are uh, expected or envisioned while making the investments are delivered, with the risks that are identified being optimized, with the resources being judiciously utilized to kind of support those business requirement. Businesses are, or the stakeholders are consistently engaged and constantly engaged to see whether they are satisfied with their with the products that are provided to them, through consistent engagements by taking the CSAT ratings, by having managed IT management framework, having a managed strategy in place to kind of uh, to kind of strategy in terms of a downstream strategy to kind of support the overall digital transformation initiatives through an established roadmap of incremental changes, using an holistic IT approach, ensuring that each initiative is connected to an overarching strategy, enabling change in a clearly connected in a different aspects of the organization, from channels and processes to data, culture, skills, operating model, and incentives. You can have a managed architecture, enterprise architecture, which can be comprehensive enough to consider the views and viewpoints of the entire business units that are there within the organization. You can have a managed innovation where you can achieve competitive advantage of your products with your products, with the ones that are available in the organization as well. Likewise, there are other governance and management objectives that could be established, um, you know that can basically be taken in from the um, COVID core model. So each of these domains can contribute with specific objectives, to kind of support the alignment goals that were created. So you can have ensured governance framework and setting and maintenance. This is one of the objectives. Likewise, can have a supporting management objective. So start with understanding what the needs of your stakeholders are, then come up with a listing of enterprise goals, then come up with a listing of IT alignment goals, and to support those IT alignment goals, use a subset of the management objectives that are defined in the core model of the KUBIT here to kind of establish a comprehensive governance of enterprise IT solution within the organization, right? Then the next area that one needs to be aware of, in terms of um, once you know, like, how do you strategically align and come up with a strategy or an initiative to support an endeavor that enterprise or the business wants to kind of achieve, you need to come up with a criteria for performance management. Now, it is an essential part of a governance and management system. It represents a general term for all activities and methods. It kind of expresses how well the governance and management system and all the components of the enterprises work and how they can be improved in order to achieve the required level. Now, it includes concepts and methods like capability levels and the maturity levels. Now, COBIT uses the term COBIT performance management to kind of describe these activities, and the concept is an integral part of the COBIT framework. So basically, there are few principles that you need to be aware of while implementing a performance management capability to evaluate the value delivery. One is um, it one is it should be simple. Okay. Simple to understand and use, and it should be consistent, um, and consistent throughout the enterprise, right? It should be consistent with and support the conceptual model. It should enable the management of the performance of all types of components of the governance systems, like the ones that we discussed: processes, policies, skill levels, the IT infrastructure resources. It should be consistent to evaluate the performance of all the components of the governance system, and must be possible to manage the performance of processes as well as the performance of other types of components like organizational structures and information. Okay. And the third principle or attribute is it should be reliable, repeatable, and relevant results should be provided out of it. and it should be flexible, um, so it can support the requirements of different organizations with different priorities and needs. And your performance management principles should also support different types of assessment, from a self-assessment to audits, internal as well as external ones. So basically, it this um, this model that you are seeing on the diagram here largely aligns to and extends the CMMI model. One is basically the process activities are associated to capability levels. This is included in the COVID 2019 governance framework. Other governance and management component types like organizational structures, information, the skill levels of the people might also have capability levels defined for them in the future guidances as well. Maturity levels are also associated with focus areas, in a sense, collection of governance and management objectives and underlying components, and this will also be achieved if required capability levels are achieved. So if the enterprises desire to continue using the COVID-5 process capability model based on the ISO 15504 standards, um, no separate process assessment model publications are necessary, no, for those use cases. And at the same time, you just need to understand that um, what is the capability that IT offers and how mature it is. So it goes through a level of 5 different phases. It is a maturity based process capability evaluation technique. Process within each governance and management objective can operate at various capability levels ranging from 0 through 5. So the capability level is a measurement of how well a process is implemented and is performing, right? So um, uh, so basically, a capability level can be achieved to varying degrees, which can be expressed by a set of ratings. So, in the range of available ratings depends on the context in which the performance assessment is made. So, um, uh, some formal methods leading to independent certifications might use a binary pass or a fail kind of a set of ratings. Less formal method, which is often used in performance improvements context, work better with larger range of ratings, such as like say for an example, it is fully capable of, like which is achieved for more than 85 percentage of the components within the governance of enterprise IT. Largely capable, partially capable, or not capable at all. So in any case, if you want to assign a rating, like from the governance of enterprise IT standpoint, if the enterprise kind of lacks any basic capabilities from a governance of enterprise IT standpoint, they have incomplete approach to address governance and management processes, may or may not be meeting the intent of the process practices, then they can have a maturity level of 0. But if you slowly start, um, maturing yourself by establishing process which is more or less achieves its purposes through the application of an incomplete set of activities that can be characterized as initial or intuitive or very not organized, then you slowly go into the maturity level of 1, and then you expand yourself to kind of evaluate how the overall processes that you have included in your governance of enterprise IT structure are maturing themselves up. The most mature one is where the processes included in the governance of enterprise IT achieves their purpose. It is well defined. Their performances are measured to improve performance, and continuous improvement is something which is kind of pursued in there. Similarly, for the focus areas, so sometimes a higher level of maturity is required for expressing performance without the granularity applicable to individual process capability ratings. Maturity levels can, right? You can use incomplete. or initial or managed, defined, quantitative, or optimizing them. So basically, if you have an incomplete maturity level for specific focus area like skill measurement or process measurement or infrastructure capability, or whatever component of the governance of enterprise IT that we have discussed in one of the previous slide. um, for each of the focus area, you can attain or provide a capability rating ranging from incomplete to that of the optimizing. So in an incomplete use case, any of the focus area might not be completed towards the achievement of the purpose of the governance and management of objectives that you have kind of defined under the strategic alignment use case or expectation. From there, you can go to initial, where some of the work is completed, but the full goal or the intent of the focus area is not yet achieved. You can go to a managed state, where planning and performance management takes place, although not yet in a standardized and repeatable manner. From there, you go to a defined state, where enterprise wide standard provide guidance across the enterprise. From there, you go to a quantitative state, where enterprise is data driven with quantitative performance improvement thing, and into an optimizing state, where the enterprise is focused on continuous improvement objectives in there. So after that activity is done, I mean, the information component within the governance of enterprise IT, we have discussed few of the component. Information was one of the component in there. It is more or less equivalent to the process work products, although not generally accepted a formal method that is designed for assessing the information system. They can be less formally assessed uh, uh, according to three main quality criteria for information. There are sub criteria as well. um, uh, so basically, information can be assessed by considering the relevant extent to which the relevant quality criteria are achieved. Like, say for an example, there are three major criteria. One is the intrinsic criteria. Intrinsic criteria is going to define the extent to which data values are complying with the actual or true values. So you can evaluate the accuracy, you can evaluate objectivity, believability, and reputation. Then you have this contextual thing, where the extent to which the information is applicable to the task of the information user is presented in a clear and intelligible manner, recognizing that information quality depends on the context of its usage. You can validate how relevant that information is, how complete that information is, how current that information is, whether it is concisely represented, it is consistently represented, it is interoperable, it is understandable, it is easy to kind of modify. So that is something that you can evaluate. So from a security or a privacy standpoint, you can evaluate their availability and the limited access or restricted access that's contained towards them. Now these are some of these quality parameters which can be used to evaluate um, the maturity levels of information that is there within the organization there. Likewise, for culture and behavior component, it should be possible to define a set of desirable behaviors for good governance and management of enterprise IT, and assign to different levels of capability of each of them. So going back to those component diagram again, so your processes, org structure, principles, policies and procedures, uh, people, skills and competencies, services, infrastructure, and applications. So these components can be evaluated using the usual CMMI structures that are in place. The information can be assessed using three quality parameters that we discussed in the previous slide, and the culture, ethics, and behavior can be evaluated by uh, designing or defining what would be considered as an acceptable kind of behavioral expectations in there. Having stated that, as I have stated, these components of COVID needs to be customized, needs to be scoped and tailored basis the complexity of the organization. So if you are expected to design a tailored governance of enterprise IT system for your organization, then you need to start with understanding what the management's objective is, what is their priority, what are the key target capability levels that they are focusing on. Uh, they are intrinsically equivalent, like a process and the components. So there is no natural order of priority among them. However, design factors that we kind of previously discussed can influence this equivalence and make some governance and management objectives more important than the other one, sometimes to the extent that some governance and management objectives might become negligible in practice. um, Thus, higher importance translate into setting higher target capability levels for more important governance and management objectives. For an example, when an enterprise identifies the most relevant enterprise goals from the enterprise goal list and applies to the goals cascade that we kind of discussed, this will lead to the selection of a priority management objectives. For an example, when the enterprise governance one, which is around portfolio of competitive products and services, is ranked as very high by an enterprise. This will make the management objective managed portfolio an important part of the enterprise's governance system. So um, so there could be another use case where enterprise is very risk averse, right? So if the enterprise is risk averse, it will give more priority to the management objectives that aspire to govern, manage risk and security, right? So if you then your EDM 03, which is around ensured risk optimization, would basically be more prioritized, um, man and governance objective. And there are this management objectives like managed risk, which is called as APO 12, in that COBIT core model that we discussed. Then there is this managed security, could be an prioritized management objective. So you need to understand, like, what are the prioritized governance and management objectives, and what are the target levels that you are expecting in terms of maturity from those use cases in there. So, and then these components variations are the second thing that you need to be aware of, because components are required to achieve governance and management objectives. And these components, what we discussed, like, for an example, processes, org structure, principles, information, people, skills and culture, services, infrastructure, as well as the application. So each components might be variable. So components are required to achieve the objectives that you have selected. So some design factors can influence the importance of one or more components and can require specific variation. For an example, small and medium sized enterprises might not need a full set of roles and organizational structures, because they might not have the relevant number of people to implement a complete organizational structure for managing an complex enterprise IT, um, uh, but might be using a reduced set. So the reduced set of governance. Yeah, so we were discussing this is about, once you prioritize what your management objectives are, you can select what components are applicable to you from this governance things that we discussed. The other example that we can consider for components variation criteria is, like, say, for an example, an enterprise which operates in a highly regulated environment will attribute more importance to documented policies and procedure and to some roles. Whereas an enterprise that uses DevOps and solution environment and operation will require specific activities and organizational structures and cultures, etc., as one of the components that needs to be considered. Some components within the governance of enterprise IT will be having more attention depending upon the type of the thing that you are uh, um, uh, supporting. And then there is this need for specific focus areas is the third components. Now, some design factors like threat landscape, specific risk, targeted development methods, and infrastructure setup will drive the need of the core COBIT model content to a specific context. Like, say, for an example, enterprises adopting what you would call as the DevOps approach will require a governance system that has a variant of several generic COBIT processes, um, uh, which are focusing upon the DevOps use case there. The other examples is like, say, for an example, small and medium enterprises that operate with an extremely lower staff, fewer IT resources, and shorter and more direct reporting lines might differ in many more aspects from larger enterprise. For that reason, the governance system for IT will have to be less complex compared to the large enterprise. Now, that is something that needs to be kind of considered as well. So the different steps in the design process that you can see in this diagram here will result in recommendation for prioritizing the governance and management objectives or related governance system components for target capability levels, or for adopting specific variants of governance system component. Now, some of the key steps or sub-steps might resulting in conflicting guidance, which is inevitable when you are considering a larger number of design factors, which are essentially the overall generic nature of the design factor guidance and mapping tables that are being used. So it is always recommended to kind of put all the guidances that are obtained during the different steps of a design canvas, and in the last stage of the design process, resolve to the possible degree the conflicts among the elements of the design canvas and conclude. So there's no magic formula. The final design will be a case by case decision based on the elements on the design canvas. Um, uh, by following the steps, enterprises will realize a governance system that is tailored to the needs. To do that, you first need to understand what is the enterprise context and strategy. Understand what are the strategy of the enterprise, which we discussed, a listing of enterprise strategies. Understand what are the supporting enterprise goals, again some of those which we discussed. Understand the risk profile of the enterprise. Understand what are the current IT issues. Once you determine that, then you go into the determination of the initial scope of the governance system, where you consider the enterprise strategy, consider the goals, and apply into the goals cascade that we kind of discussed in the previous slide. You consider the risk profile, and then refine the scope of the governance system by considering the compliance requirements, the threat landscapes, the role of the IT, understanding the sourcing model, um, you know, the adoption strategy and enterprise size, and finally conclude the governance system design by resolving inherent priority conflicts and conclude the governance systems that you are planning to target. So we have gone through the different phases. We understood in terms of the key components of governance IT. We understood the different domains from a governance the objective perspective, from a management objective perspective. So there are five domains. There are there are governance objectives and management objectives included in some of those domains, and from there we understood some of the enterprise strategy factors and some of the design parameters that needs to be considered while developing and governance of enterprise IT. And then we discussed how to scope and tailor it as per the relevant areas that you need to be focusing on. The last piece is to kind of, once this design is completed, it needs to be implemented, right? So um, uh, so basically, this implementation must be covering an enterprise-wide view of the governance of enterprise IT solution. So, like there should be recognition that IT is pervasive in enterprises, and it is neither possible nor good practices to separate business and IT related activities, because they are they are closely married together. So the governance and management of enterprise IT should therefore be implemented as an integral part of the enterprise governance, covering full end-to-end business and IT functional areas of responsibilities. So from an implementation approach standpoint, there are 7 phases that consist of implementation approach. You need to first understand like what are the drivers, where are we now, where we want to be, what needs to be done, how do we get there, how do we keep the momentum going. So that is where you start with, like what are your drivers. That's the starting point. Once you um, do that, so phase one of the implementation approach identifies current change drivers, create an executive management level desire to the change, and there's then expressed in the outline of the business case. So a change driver could be coming in from internal or an external event, condition, or a key issue that kind of serves as a stimulus for a change, like performance shortfall, software implementation, and multiple other things. So preparing and monitoring a business cases are fundamental and important disciplines for the life cycle. And from there, you need to go to understanding where we are now, like what are the problems, what are the opportunities, form an implementation team, assess the current state. From there, design a roadmap in terms of implementing this outcome that you have designed. So it needs to be communicated from top to down approach. A plan must be created, roles and responsibilities must be identified, and plan must be executed, benefits must be evaluated, and kind of evaluating whether we have actually realized the definition, whether we have actually realized. And finally, you need to ensure that there is this continuous improvement mechanism which is in place. So to summarize, implementing a governance of enterprise IT is something that the boards across the enterprises around the world are focusing on. It follows a complex sequence of activities. First, you need to identify the key components because IT has become a major driver for the deliverables from a business standpoint. Um, that was the first step. So you need to understand what are the components, then ensure there is strategic alignment between the IT and business objectives, and then you kind of identify the design factors considering the risk and resource optimization parameters. Then design a custom governance of enterprise IT by considering the stakeholder requirements, creating enterprise goals, defining the alignment goals, and then selecting the management objectives. Sometimes you need to prioritize some of the components, sometimes you have to prioritize some of the management objectives and goal, governance objectives, and then sometimes you have to prioritize some of the focus areas. Once the design is ready, it needs to be implemented, and it should be following through a succession plan. There can be challenges while implementing things because people might not be receptive to some of the changes that you are planning to bring in to have an optimized outcome or something relative to that. You might have to have the necessary backing from the board and the leadership to kind of do something. It requires consistent investment. So how you optimize your resources judiciously, how do you enhance the outcome, is something that you need to be consistently understanding. This is what I had in the agenda for today. From a governance of enterprise IT perspective.